and coming to the space. So let's open up for a 2-minute meditation, and after that I will invite George to frame us a checking-in question. So let's start. Welcome again. George.
So we are at the midpoint, halfway of our Protopia learning journey. And that's a good time to reflect on what, and this is my checking question for you to reflect on. But before I share the checking question, just one thing about how to pay attention to what each of us is going to respond to with the checking question, because each voice is a distinctive expression of our collective wisdom. So, and also for being able to truly listen from your heart, it will be important that you don't have to think about, oh, what I'm going to say when it's my turn to say something. To avoid that, I'm suggesting that spend a week, not a week, just 1 minute. 1 minute in silence to reflect on the question. You can do it also for a week. But let's say 1 minute in silence to reflect on the question, notice what is coming up, and then share. So the question is, in your sensing, what is the single most important collective competence that this group needs to develop for becoming a true learning community, a community that learns, not only a group of friends, but a community that is capable to develop collective intelligence. What is the single most important competence that we need to strengthen? So take your time, and then when you are ready, just start somebody sharing. And keep it short, like 1 word or 1 sentence. So thank you, Bonnie, to typing in the chat, but it would be also good if we give voice to it.
Empathy.
Right. Pavel, would you say it?
Energizing and recharging ourselves.
Generative listening.
Yes, yes.
Adding concrete stance on learning what in particular, because learning for sake of learning, it's kind of difficult to track. So it's better focus on concrete learning what.
So what is the competence that we need to develop, Irena?
Sense making.
Sense making? Okay, thank you.
I would say collective intelligence. I mean, sorry, not collective intelligence. That's what the question is. Intrinsic motivation, I think, is what I would say. Because everyone needs to have some kind of intrinsic drive.
Something as simple as finding time to get together.
it's also what came to mind for me was coordinating and communicating our shared attention, whether that's in a space or ingesting the same media documents or otherwise.
So my openness and empowerment for other people.
Did we hear from everybody? Mafe and Anna, Alina, Martin, yes.
Yeah, I'll go next. I've been waiting for it to not be there, but it's sticking about, and it's what I understand to be non-violent communication, which is another way of saying something along the lines of communication with intrinsic motivation built in. The pattern.
Mhm.
Mine was, I put in there sensing the social field. So hearing what wants to emerge, sensing what wants to emerge.
It's very close to Elena's sense making also.
And from my feelings before, it was like before this lockdown periods, it was passion for learning, and now it's more like passion for learning.
Mine is humility, consistency, and precision.
Humility and
Consistency and precision.
consistent in precision. Wow.
Mhm.
So I love to reflect on what is emerging from the collective field, but I refrain myself from doing so because that would take the rest of our session. But what I will do is in the next pen, the Protopia Expedition newsletter, I will use my editorial to share what your insights evoked in me, to reflect back what is my sense of what is emerging from our group field. Over to you, Pavel.
Thank you very much, George. Perfect timing too for our check-in, which I think created a really potent space for the meeting today. So today we wanted to, first of all, begin by connecting with the discovery team's work that you hopefully have been holding. I know that all of the teams have been meeting. Some of them made good progress. So we wanted to dedicate some time to support you in this process to move to the next step. And then the second part of our meeting will be the exploration of some of the most essential aspects of organizational shift with a process that some of you could have experienced in the face-to-face process, but it's rarely done online, but we probably are quite ready to do it in our group. It's called World Café. And once you get to it, I hope it will be quite exciting to try it out together. But now let's begin by opening up a space for questions, or maybe sharing of the progress. Where are you now as teams, and what questions stood out for you as you were meeting throughout the last week or beginning of this week in your discovery teams? If any. Have you been meeting? I know that you did. That
Yes.
You were.
Well, I mean, we came up with 2 questions to start with, which have then, I think, opened up a whole lot more, many more questions. I can talk about, just mention what our 2 questions are. Is that what you'd like me to do? Shall I share those?
Well, I think it will be useful for
Yeah. Okay.
other teams to hear.
This was the title originally was Generating Resources, and that's up for review as a title right now. And the 2 questions that we started to come up with was how to align with source that will take our reach to the next level. And the other question was, how might we consider and identify currency value in our organizations or projects for attracting and exchanging currency within an evolutionary and regenerative frame. So that's where we started.
And just to be clear, did you also follow up from, let's say, the process which invites to, first of all, consider a question as a first person, so to say, from the personal standpoint, before moving to, let's say, collective question for exploration?
We sort of had that in our minds, but in our one meeting that we had very little time in the end to actually get to the question. We just came up with something at that particular time, but with it in mind, keeping in mind the first, second, and third person inquiry. And my team members, our team members, please chip in here.
Thank you very much, Gina.
Well, just a quick reflection on both questions, that they are both beautiful, powerful, generative, and to follow up on what Pavel said as a reminder of the first and second person inquiry, first starting with the first, that to make these questions authentic, not, and I mean energizing, not just an intellectual question, then for the next steps, I would recommend to make it personal. Make it personal in a sense that those of you who suggested those questions share with others, where does it come from? What happened in your life that brought that question to the surface, and as a suggestion for the inquiry? Not right now, but you will have time for that.
Yes,
maybe
absolutely.
even today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I also jump in? I think that during our first meeting within our team, we spent some time on like discussing some administrative questions, and we don't have enough time maybe to go to a certain depth level. And if we will continue, we will definitely do so naturally. So I think it will be like natural next step. And also, I have not an announcement, but still, we also invited Martin to join us as a member or guest member, because he has so many, interesting thoughts about resources, and we are continue in our small group from previous modules. So it's kind of also our, I don't know, guest member, it's up to him, but this is also an important part of our update.
We were also talking about the importance of understanding ecosystems and how in an ecosystem it's the regenerative relationships creating regenerative resources. So the value we create can also attract resources either in more relationships or in material resources. So it's about value creation within an ecosystem and relationships.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that came up really from you, Mafe, was something that struck me was about impacting on the consciousness of those of investors. So in the kind of relationships and the kind of thinking and the way one deals with resources. So that was something you raised, which I thought was interesting.
Wonderful. Any questions from any other groups? In about 5 minutes, we wanted to invite you to move into breakouts to plan the next step of your teams. So before doing that, if anything that surfaced in other teams, what are the questions that you have started to identify? What are the focal points that you aim to discover?
Well, maybe I speak for our group. Bonnie, Alina, hi. Don't see you, but hope you're here. Yeah, you're here. Yeah, so we didn't get a chance to meet with Matthias, but Matthias created a document for us so that we can work in asynchronous manner. And we had a very nice free-flowing meeting on Saturday, where like we started exactly with personal stories, and so Bonnie, Alina, and I have told like some personal stories to get to know each other better, and somehow out of that some questions have appeared on what exactly evolutionary purpose of the organization is, who is needed to articulate it, or should it be articulated at all, or the value of evolutionary purpose to be sort of intangible. And we put down some of these notes and had a meeting with George on Sunday with Alina, sent then the recording to the rest of the group, and that was very inspirational. And I don't know, Alina, do you have something to add? And Bonnie, like if you feel like adding, I don't know. I while speaking, I do realize that I'm not somehow able to detach the learning from describing my experience. I need to work on it, but at least I can tell that that was a very inspirational experience last week, going through our meeting, writing, talking to George, and thinking afterwards. So, Bonnie. Alina, if you would like to add something, Matthias.
I think it's really hard to talk about what we learned through each other, like the stories and the experience that we had together. I mean, that's kind of what this is all about. It's that experience and the depth of connection that we felt in the moment of having the conversations. I don't really know how to talk about that. We did talk about how do you scale that. And, you know, I don't know that that can be done. You can't scale the ineffable. So.
Yeah.
So perhaps the proposal for you now would be to explore your next steps in the groups that you are part of. Leah, will it be possible to make these breakouts according to the groups that have been selected? Thank you.
How long would you like it to be? I can just set the time now.
Yes, I was thinking that let's spend just 10 minutes because this is more like for you to coordinate while you're still here in the same shared space. The next week, because in the first week, normally in a design that we keep in mind, we assume that you would go into a first round of conversations and start to explore your focal topic. What are you curious about? What drives you in this topic? What is your passion? What is your inspiration? So this is where this first person perspective comes in. And then the second week of our segment, normally we assume that you would move more into a collective knowledge building process where you can start to pull in knowledge from, let's say, collective experience, case studies, scientific articles, and so on. And the third week, again, normally is dedicated to building up something that you can share with others, more like a detached experience that you can, transferable experience, so to say, more like a transferable experience. And so the invitation to you right now is to spend next 10 minutes to coordinate how you can best spend your next week in advancing your collective exploration. So and again, this is more like a planning conversation to make sure you meet throughout the week 1 or 2 times to advance your discovery team.
Okay.
Yeah, can we? All right, ready to go. So how was your conversation? Did you need more time to align with each other?
Yes.
I believe that it will be useful to agree on meeting, and probably, especially because I can hear that some of the teams are only beginning to discover what they want to discover. Maybe you can think of more than 1 hour meeting during next week, if possible, to really dive deeper into the question that you are aiming to explore. And of course, like with anything in our life, the more attention we dedicate to it, the more we earn from it. Are there any questions, maybe more related to the process that we are going through, and some methodological questions that you have in mind that you would like to bring to George, myself, and the group?
No, not for me. For me, I'm just trying to go with the flow. Here, what we agreed to focus on tomorrow. Maybe this is something wrong, and you can redirect us. So we agreed that tomorrow we will focus on discussing of the type of learning experience which we could later on share with the group. So basically, to keep in focus the shape of learning experience, and then in asynchronous manner to choose like the elements of that learning, but to discuss types of exercises or types of presentation, or like not presentation but sharing of the knowledge tomorrow. So that's our agenda for tomorrow's 1 hour meeting. And maybe some questions will occur, then we will send the notes to George. Maybe he can still meet with us on Sunday, and then more inspiration will come.
Marina, what's the title of the group?
Evolutionary Purpose.
Evolutionary Purpose.
Did all of you see the recommended resources that I created, the Google Doc for you?
I
Okay.
looked through it and was impressed with the number of those resources. And what I was sharing with my colleagues, that we should probably split it in portions, because it's very massive. Like it's very attractive to look into, but I, for example, could not find time to look through them and carefully read them. So that's my challenge, and only weekend I can dedicate to this.
Yeah, the secret motivation of mine by providing 6 short videos and 4 short written documents, my intention was to overwhelm you, because obviously nobody has time to watch all those videos and read all those things. And it's exactly the point that because nobody has time to do it all, so hopefully you are going to organize yourselves in a way that together all of you can cover something, so that the rest of the group can benefit from the insights picked up by the one who watched this or that video.
Can someone send me that list? It's very interesting. It sounds very interesting.
Yes, I will try to. I mean, I will do it, Matthias.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting approach, George, which I appreciate a lot, to create a almost VUCA situation. Stress, uncertainty, complexity, where a team of pathfinders has to self-organize and really model the principles that they try to explore. So I think this is exactly what we try to do. We try to live by these principles, and you are creating a beautiful invitation to try and do it.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So that we didn't discuss it, but something that occurs to me in relation to how you've described that, Pavel, and talking about resources, is also we've got to be able to focus so that we can contain a smaller version of what we all, I think, have big ambitions to discover in various ways. And so it's how can we be really focused and yet very really deal with where we want to take this within the time space that we have, within the resources that we have, all of them, actually. Exciting and challenging and, yeah, fun.
And I think the invitation from George to go and explore this collectively was there, let's say, all the time,
yeah,
by means of the platform and resources he's providing. But within this particular segment, we clearly have to consciously start to address it. So we need to look at the principles of organizing that help us divide and yet unite, yet share. And perhaps part of the story, which we will hopefully explore momentarily, is that the purpose of these discovery teams is learn to develop this collective competence for learning, to open up to the potential of collective intelligence, where some of us become like sensory organs or processing organs for the information we are infusing, and distributing the most essential knowledge to others, so that it's learning by individuals, but not for sake of individuals, more like learning by individuals, which then becomes the collective learning.
May I share, Pavel?
Yes, please, Mafé.
Very interesting, because these last few days, there were many information that came, and I had found myself doing few things, and I decided to not open any information, not just from our exploration, but also from my other projects, and tried to center. And I actually, for the first time, said, I'm going to go explore from first inquiry. What does it mean for me? What truly is this exploration is? And considering I'm doing 3 projects for this exploration, I began to see different things that came up for me. And that's why I've been invoking to change the title of our team from generating resources to regenerative source, is because I found that I am the source, that you are the source, and all of us are the source of which we are aiming for, we were reaching for. And if I were to come from source, when I call for consistency, I'm calling it from inside of me, that I am going to embody that I'm going to embody the source. And what does it mean? When I am called for to do something, I'm giving 100%. And what does that mean, to be 100% on something that I am giving for? And that 100% multiplies. And if I cannot multiply that and it's depleting me, then I am not a regenerative source from that task that I'm doing. So it's for me to identify where can I be regenerative and where I could be dying. And this is, and because in terms of time, there's a container of 1 hour. In that 1 hour, the comparing some of my meeting to 1 hour we have with George, it's like expansive. We spoke as if it's like a whole day, but I could have a meeting with somebody that I could just have, seems like 10 minutes is like very is important. So yeah, so now it's very important for words and titles and all this, it's become significant. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this insight, Mafe. And I wanted to suggest perhaps to also start shifting the gear and use our collective capacity of us being present in this meeting today to explore some of the dimensions that are related to your discovery team journey, but more so to the organizational shift we are exploring. So I would like to invite you into a process which will take about 45 minutes. So just before going there, I want to check up with you, because we have been in this meeting for about 50 minutes to an hour, depending on who joined when. And do you feel like you need a short break before going into the process, or would you like to go like without that break? What is your preference?
And on time.
And on time. So would you like to stay and just continue, right?
Yeah.
All right, great. So we are moving into a process that is called World Café, and it is a, let's say, a very popular and widely used collective discovery, collective exploration process that allows to tap into what we can call the collective intelligence of a group. And I was very enthusiastic to learn that George was actually part of the community that has originally discovered it several decades ago in the middle of 90s. And George, I think you can share that war story one day. I think it will be very, very interesting. But for the time being, I just wanted to say that this is really a beautiful process. So have some of you experienced it before? Have you tried it? So Marina did. Anyone else? Matthias?
Around 100 or 50 times, maybe.
Okay, Matthias is very, very experienced in the World Café. Okay, I probably should just hand over to you, Matthias, now. An expert in the process. Anyway, it most beautifully is done in face-to-face meetings, where people really are like almost like sitting in a cafe, and it models that atmosphere of a cafe where you move from table to a table, and different table has a conversation. Like first sit on one table and chat with people about something, and then you go to another table and they have a totally different conversation to which you can also contribute. So this process models that spirit, but in a more organized way. So we are going to have 3 tables in our cafe, and you will be moved. You will not move by yourself. I will be facilitating this for you. So I will help you move from one table to another. And you will have a certain amount of time to spend at each table. And every table will have a question that is going to be explored at that table, and someone who is known as a table host. So a person that stays at that table all the time and kind of keeps the thread of a conversation when new people join in. And a table host has a responsibility of holding the conversation and also kind of holding the continuity. So table host helps the newcomers catch up with the most essential things that have been discussed or at that table when new people join in. So we will have 3 rounds, and each of you will be able to contribute to each of these 3 tables, and each of the tables is going to have its own question. These questions we have derived from the requests and interests that you have indicated at the beginning of our segment, questions that have not become focal questions for your exploration. So this question that some of you are going to explore is called, how can we create more soulful organizations and workplaces? How can we be in the space where more of our soul opens up? What this means? What is that aspect of organizational shift? The second table and the second question is going to be dedicated to flexibility and agility. So the question is, how can we create organizations that are more flexible and more agile? And what does it mean for our workplaces and our teams? And the last question and the last table is about collective intelligence. So we know there are many benefits of collective intelligence, but how can we make organizations that are increasingly collectively intelligent? And also workplaces and also teams. So not necessarily structured organizations. Organizations can be informal. They don't have to have a legal stature to be organizations, of course. So these three tables are going to be hosted by Mafe, who will hold the conversation on soulful organizations, Mia, who will hold the conversation on agile and flexible organizations, and Gina, who will support the conversation on collective intelligence in organizations. So this is basically the process, and you will have 3 rounds. So after about 12 minutes, that is the first round, I'm going to say, like maybe before that, I'm going to send you the message that I will transfer you soon. And then something strange will start to happen, because you will start see new people joining your room, some people, old people present leaving, and then you occasionally are also transferred to a different room. So this is how we handle it in the virtual space. Unfortunately, that's the only way currently. So, and after that, you join another table and you contribute to the table. Just first listen to what the table host is going to share with you, and then try to catch up and be in that space. And in order to also capture, harvest what you're about to explore, there is this document, the Google Doc. I know that some of you have difficulty accessing the Google Docs, but most of you will be able to do it. And also, hopefully, the ability to share your screen will work in every room. I asked Mia to set it up the way that we hopefully are able to share our screens. So this is it. This is it. And if you have any questions right now, I can answer them, or we can jump straight into our collective exploration.
Pavel, before we jump, I just want to say that there is a lovely little cartoonish graphic about the spirit of the Word Cafe that you can download it. I put the file in the chat notes at 6:30, so it's just above Anna's notes about yeah, you can find, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So can I just add something too? Just a thought. If anyone has pencil and paper with them or something, and you want to doodle, you want to do something like this picture, you want to take notes, you want to have something even graphically that we will share afterwards. In the feedback, maybe just hold the picture up, but otherwise we'll ask you to take a photo so that we can share it in the library. So if you've got any kind of possibility, please make it available for yourself and use it.
Yeah. So I would like to read some of this, and thank you very much, Gina, for reminding, because part of the story in face-to-face Real Cafe is about World Cafe is about playing, drawing, and doodling as you listen to others. And usually tables are covered with just big sheets of paper where you can do that and add to one another writings. So you can see that there are some statements. Speak with your mind and your heart, contribute your thinking, listen together for patterns, insights, and deeper connections, slow down, facilitate yourself and others. So we are all co-facilitators, and have fun. So these are some of principles of World Cafe, and also they convey the spirit of the cafe. Thank you very much, George, for sharing this. All right, are we ready to go now? So I will open up polls, the session breakouts, and the Mia, you will need to transfer to session breakout number 2. All right, I'm opening them right away. Picks you up, but sometimes you you were moving together with others, so probably you were discovering some of the people you were seeing in other sessions too. So not everyone was in real life, when you are, especially when you can choose the table by yourself, it moves more, let's say, naturally, because you can see that you want to stay with some people, you move to the next table and explore something with them. Sometimes in World Cafe, people are also allowed to stay at the table to continue the conversation. They are encouraged to pass on, but sometimes if they feel like they want to stay another round in the same place, it also works. So, of course, the process, if you are choosing to move by yourself, it's more flexible. But here we modeled it as much as we could. All right. We have about 20 minutes until the official end of our session. And if it's fine with everyone, we could just spend these 20 minutes sharing what has been discovered by your teams and end our sessions. I know that some of you would like to end the time, and I completely agree that this is very desirable. So is that fine if we move straight into the sharing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we had 3 teams, and I first of all would like to invite table hosts who kind of kept the thread of the conversation to share what has been discovered in each of your at each of your tables, and then maybe some other people who participated in that table can add after the host shares.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we begin with you, Mafe, if that's fine?
Okay. There's a lot of great nuggets in this question and that had been shared, and I don't know if I have enough capability to have captured everything, but one of which that it's very important is how is the soul, that actually Elena defined the soul, that that it's actually eternal, and at the same time she was able to parallel it. It's eternal and sustainable, it's old, and yet it's young and alive, and how can that be in organization? And also from deriving from others share about coming from values, coming from self, and how do we embody this? And Matthias actually brought up a certain interesting challenge with it, is how about the other organization like the Islamic State organization that also have value, the same thing that we are trying to talk about. They also have values and cohesiveness, motivation. It's kind of parallel, but before that group left, we were able to define that even though this is parallel how do you call it, description of what it is that somebody embodies, but it actually end up to be different cause and different results. And what also come from this space is also the how is it practiced in what Martin calls we-toism, and he described it as divided into 4 quadrants with me now, me future, we now, and we future. So and yeah, so I think I'm kind of summarizing what is already written in the page.
Thank you, Mafe, for doing that beautiful job of integrating the threads of conversation. And Is there anyone who would like to add or comment? George, would you like to comment on the first group's findings, or shall we listen to other groups?
Well, I can give a quick comment about the harvest. The real-time documentation of what is happening is always challenging, and of course it's always richer when it's a collaborative harvest, when everybody is contributing by capturing whatever strikes him or her. And about this particular harvest that Mafe just presented, I feel that it is so good, so detailed, that comes close to what your team, one of the tasks of the team is creating an artifact that can be useful for others who are not participating in the team. So this is a rich, fertile soil, raw material to creating that artifact. And when you get there in the last week, just make sure that these shorthand phrases that doesn't necessarily have the context that would explain what is the meaning of that in relation to the team, that you expand it into full sentences. That's all.
And thank you, Mafe, for capturing so soulfully the conversation, to really keep the whole perspective of people that were expressing this at your table. Thank you. Mia, would you be willing to share the findings of
yes, definitely.
flexible and agile organizations?
Yeah. So it was nice because pretty much everyone actually knew about it. So that was quite nice. Something that really came up quite a lot for me that I thought was quite interesting was that being agile might not actually suit every kind of organization. Some may not actually work well under those kind of conditions, and having to, like, I think Mateus gave the example of in an aircraft situation where there's like a crash or you have something going on, there's a specific checklist, and it doesn't work to be agile and to be like, oh, we don't need to do that, or we don't need to do that. Like, you have to follow procedures for specific things. And Martin mentioned state-funded organizations. It doesn't work for them to be agile. I thought that was quite interesting. That and then in my last group, I was all girls, which was quite nice. And they and something that came up there was that obviously a lot of people pretend to be agile. A lot of organizations pretend to be agile, and they just say like, oh yeah, I'm agile and that's that. But how can we actually identify, like, okay, does this business need to be agile? Is this business or is this organization a new organization with a new culture of how organizations should be run? And that might best suit people to become more agile, but all businesses, they need to adapt, and they might need to actually change a lot of their systems, a lot of their protocols, and it might actually end up being a lot more work than just being simply agile. And then there's something I wrote down. Is something I think Alina said was agile, working in an agile is like a flow of the organization, and if the people are not actually agile themselves, then it won't work. You can't just convert people to suddenly become like self-organized and suddenly become much more creative and kind of figure out these whole new protocols and systems. The people need to embody it too, and the organization has to embody it. So it's finding that balance. Yeah, there's just a few of the points.
Thank you very much, Mia. Anyone from the group would like to add? No. Well, my immediate reaction would be that this question is somewhat tricky, because it sort of starts to move us towards the idea of agile organizations or agile project management, which is a specific methodology and a specific framework of management. Whereas the question is also inviting us to think about, in a broader context, like about flexibility of organizations. So, and I quite strongly agree that organizations might have different levels or different degrees of flexibility. And indeed, some of them need to be more repetitive, more, let's say, relied on repetition of certain procedures to be reliable and consistent in what they do. Like aircraft management, management is probably a very good example of that. But on the other hand, every organization can increase its flexibility. So we can indeed learn about that, and possibility for that increase can be done by different means. It's not only about using the agile methodology that is currently promoted, but different, let's say, approaches. George, would you like to comment on? You're on mute now.
Okay. So, yeah, agile is the latest buzzword of the dying capitalism, of the capitalist management. Agile is not value neutral. It is about making the organization more productive, which is good. But each time when we hear that the organization has to be more flexible, more efficient, more productive, we always need to ask, for the sake of what? For the sake of whom? Who is deciding the goal of the production? So in the current mode of production, agile is serving the interest of the owners of the organization and the stockholders, not necessarily the workers. And there is something positive in agile ways of organizing projects. And the positive is that once the organizations went through the shift, and organization shift, this is what we are about. Once an organization is engaging in Protopia, not just sustaining the current dystopia, then people in the organization will need to have capacity, methods, ways to work in an agile way. So Mia was right when she mentioned that for agile organizing, people needs to be agile. But what does it mean? What does it mean that I am working in a team in an agile way? It means a greatly increased self-responsibility, that I am more accountable for what do I do, how do I do it, because my teammates depend on my output, but that can be fully developed, that kind of agility, only in the conditions of self-management. Because before that, people are not that motivated just to become more agile for the sake of the current system. That's not the official position of the campus, because the campus does not have an official position about the content of our teaching, but this is my take on agile management.
And I would strongly agree, George, because I also feel that it is important to understand why in each of these cases we are looking at dimensions of an evolving organizations that are inviting more opportunities for personal, interpersonal, collective thriving. So if agility is in the service of that and really liberates people, then we probably should be talking about better versions of agility and worse versions of agility. If it becomes more like a new mode of exploitation, it really deprives people from really owning their life. A lot of people in agile working environments find it quite often that they cannot really own their life because they're constantly in this short runs of another project and another task list and another like flow of ongoing inputs from their managers, supervisors, partners, team members. They don't really control their time or their effort, and it's more flexible from the organizational standpoint, but really less so from the personal standpoint. So the question is, how do we move towards, let's say, a healthier version of agility, a thrivability oriented version of agility? And perhaps this is, yeah, please, Mafe.
Isn't it, what would be the opposite of the agility? Is it called water flow? But then one that I'm thinking of is organization has to adapt to what would serve them at that, because if one is to go for water flow and they needed to be agile, it doesn't work, there's gonna be friction and nothing will be done. But if somebody has to be organically true to what is necessary at the time, because these are just tools, what we are defining is agility or the other one. So if we are true to that of which will serve us, then that will produce something. And what you had said, Pavel, about freedom, there's more freedom in alignment to what is true to us, and very constricting to something that is not true to us. So as a person, as in relationship, as well as in organization. That's just what's coming to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mafe. I think this opens up a very rich conversation that we can hold, but in the interest of time, a lot of these questions that are surfacing right now, we can kind of keep them for later and reflect on them, as like George suggests, for the next week. All right, let's explore the last table's contribution. Last but not least, so to say.
Okay. So how can we create more collectively intelligent organizations and workplaces? Yeah, I think the idea of everybody contributing to harvesting is a good reminder, George. Thank you. We didn't do it, but it's a good reminder to do that. It facilitates good flow too, I think. So things that came up were that collective intelligence, almost, they're different skills, different parts that can help create more, but it requires flexibility, aliveness, and it was suggested that rituals and collective tools are useful to create the kind of space where collective intelligence can exist. And you connect by heart and soul. By heart and soul. Oops, practical and heart. Practical and heart. Okay, sorry. On the other hand, something that did come up was technological protocols for communication based on openness that we work through, you know, to be inclusive, to ensure that there's inclusivity, and also for shared information, to ensure the easy accessibility of shared information, if that comes from those who are contributing. And new tools have to build and be built into this culture. It was felt that where there is a hierarchical structure, there might be opportunity to work in smaller spaces, in smaller collectives, where collective intelligence and sharing is possible. Also creating the human capacity for social protocols, local to context in which people are situated, and sharing. So one of the other points that came up was working at borders, looking at where the borders are within an organization and trying to make sure that you cross over those borders to open up the impact of different ways of knowing. But interestingly enough, can you just go down a bit, thanks Pavel, or up to the bottom? And what came up at the end was really interesting, because it was the questions of how does the organization feel to know that collective intelligence is in place? Is there a tipping point for it to be or not? How do we see if it is not just felt intuition, some sharing? Is it for a new idea? Is it for resolving an issue? What is the criteria to make it collective intelligence? So yes, what is the definition of how collective intelligence manifests in the world? And is it when something new comes up, or would not otherwise, that might not otherwise be? So these were some of the things that came up, also talking about innovation, fixing problems, innovation. That's what came out of our 3 tours, and if there's any input from anybody else in the team.
Is anyone interested to add? My immediate reaction is that I think the questions that came up last, there's a lot of very rich conversation that you apparently had at your table. And the question for criteria, and actually recognizing that, for example, collective intelligence is in place, is equally a question we can pose in regard to what other groups have been exploring.
Exactly.
So what it means to be a soulful organization, what it means to be a flexible organization. When do we know that there is such an organization? How do we discern? And perhaps that could be integrated into a question: what do we mean by an organization that is an expression of Protopia and that moves us towards Protopia? So we explored some of these dimensions in the conversation today, but there are more. For example, a focus on collective and personal well-being could be, well, some could argue it's really similar in some regards to being a soulful organization, but that can also be another dimension of Protopian organization that contributes. Yes, please, Gina.
No, I was just going to say that sort of, so what came up too in the sense of that, related a little bit to that sense of well-being, was also the desire to be part of working together and to be part of a collective that shares and contributes to a project, a situation, and that I didn't mention, but that issues of trust are absolutely fundamental to as a basis of collaboration in any form.
Thank you. George, would you like to comment? Or please, Mafe, also.
I'd like to add to Gina about trust, you know. So trust only comes up when one feels safe. So there is more generation of ideas and all this when a person can actually flow into that conversation. And I think it's also connected to the kind of from the second segment that we had studied, if we could actually hold space for the person. But if there is judgment, there is no curiosity. So curiosity and judgment cannot coexist. So when there is judgment, we will see silence. And that's very dangerous sometimes, because that's when somebody can withdraw and not participate. So it's one word, trust, but it actually is connected to many things.
Yeah, Alina did raise the issue of leadership and setting the space, if you like, for that.
I also wanted to highlight the land trust. All three topics become interconnected. Probably that soulful organization and our ability to give each other more. If there is an atmosphere where each of us contributes more, and we really move towards more liquid, more, let's say, actor dependent or employee dependent processes. George, maybe some final comments. I know we are about to wrap up the session today, so you're on mute again.
I will keep it short also, because I don't have many comments, basically just one comment, that you guys presented a rich tapestry of concepts, notions, distinctions, even some elements of theories, frameworks. What I am left hungry about is how did you feel in this process, working with this question? How did you feel in terms of your personal curiosity about questions of what it could be like if this community would develop collective intelligence? How would you recognize it, that we have collective intelligence, as opposed to a collection of intelligences. Like right now, we are more a collection of intelligences, not as much yet a collective intelligence. That's why the question on your table has great practical implications if you choose to engage, look into those implications. Of course, for that, the 3 times 10 minutes or whatever it was, it's not enough, but asking from the whole cohort, those who visited that table, is there anybody who is interested in the question of how can this community grow collective intelligence? How would you know that, and how would we do it? Is it a question worth reflecting on? If you think that it is worth reflecting on and you want to participate in an ongoing conversation and exploration about it, raise your hand. You don't have to. Good, good. So I don't keep track of who raised hands, who didn't, but I will probably initiate some conversation, and then it will be your freedom to participate or not.
Wonderful. I can suspect that one of the first manifestations of collective intelligence is an ability to organize as collectives around topics that we are collectively interested in. So that awakening of collective curiosity probably is a sign that the collective intelligence begins emerging. So again, like, thank you, George, for creating the opportunity to move into that space. All right. Now we are finishing this session, and thank you very much for a rich conversation we had today. And I hope you you will be left with a lot of questions to ponder upon throughout, including the one that opened up in the beginning. Your homework task is very simple, and you already know what to do, because you need to get together with your teams and advance your discovery process, so that by the time we meet next in a week from now, you will be able to share with each other already a number of discoveries, and the last week will dedicate more to sharing with a larger group, to designing that learning experience for each other that we will do throughout the reversed classroom in the last meeting of the segment. Thank you. Have a great day, evening, night, wherever you are. See you in 1 week from now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day and evening.
Bye-bye.